There are many things happening around us in our daily lives. Everything happening around us had some scientific reason behind them, but it is difficult to know what exactly is happening in background. For example, a farmer doesn't know anything about force multiplication, etc. All that he knows is a pulley or a lever can make his job easy. Similarly, we also get persuaded by our mind to do some things we do not have any idea about the science happening behind them. Now jumping into the main topic, it is quite common that court passes strict orders not to reveal any opinion polls during the election time. Have you ever thought why it is done so? Do you know that there is scientific phenomenon behind this act? If the opinion polls are out just before the polling, then they might influence you to vote for the winning candidate. This is why EC prohibits all opinion polls before elections. And this phenomenon is called social bias, and social contagion combined with social bias can be disastrous. Many people might have seen the things to fall due to gravity, but none of them tried to look deeper into it. So Newton was able to discover something that the mankind haven't. If Newton had not questioned himself that why the apple fell on his head, probably someone else might have earned the credit for discovering the gravity. So we may or may not discover anything new, but it is interesting and worthy enough to try to learn the science behind these phenomena. As our main aim is to discuss about social contagion, now let us look into a few cases where we can get more idea about social contagion. The topics that we are looking into are financial contagion and the arms race. First, let us discuss about financial contagion. We will consider the financial crisis as a parameter that spreads. The people use contagion as a general word and blame financial contagion to be the reason for it for any financial crisis happening in two countries. So the actual definition is being diluted. This brings us a need to clearly define and determine which is financial contagion and which is not. The cases when financial crisis is not because of financial contagion are: 1. If there is no link between the countries suffering from financial crisis, we can surely say that here the contagion has no role in crisis. 2. If the financial crisis in two countries are simultaneous, then there we can say that financial crisis in one country is because of the other. Crisis in both may be due to reason of some other country. Financial contagion is said to occur when actual financial contagion in one country is reason for crisis in another. Some scenarios might look like financial contagion, but they are actually not. We often see in news that there is country suffering from inflation. And at the same time we may see that there are some ripples in country like us, which is connected via trade to a large pool of countries. The inflation may be due to raising interests or some other reason in USA, but this will have effect on the other countries. These effects of temporary ripples in the economies cannot be termed as financial contagion, so we introduce a new term: monsoon effects. The monsoon effects will fall back in equilibrium in a short period of time. We now look into another case, that is, arms race. The definition of arms race is the continuing competitive attempt by two or more nations each to have available to it more and more powerful weapons than the other. The reasons for the arms race are: 1. To project its military superiority over a region or global platform, in simple words, to strike fear in other countries claiming its superiority over them. United States, a country which keeps its presence in every ocean, to show its superiority too. The second reason is deterrence. The country on weak side in the arms race generally takes this role. The main aim of this country is to protect itself, the aggressor, by keeping up with it. Example is arms race in South China Sea, that is Vietnam, Japan, Thailand increasing arms to deter China. Now let's see some scenarios that happen due to arms race. 1. Nuclear arms race. 2. Battleship scenario in World War I. First, let's see what a battleship scenario is about. This scenario started few years before the World War I, and ended in 1922, due to a treaty sign. The battleships are the most feared military equipment during the World War. These ships ruled the sea during both First and Second World Wars. From 1905, then-known global superpowers Britain, United States, Italy, Japan, Germany were engaged in fierce competition in building battleships. These countries were very obsessed with building the naval superiority machines, battleships. We can observe this condition with the help of graph plotted for various countries. The graph clearly shows how the countries tried to increase the tonnage of their respective vessels. Note the tonnage is to determine how large the ships are. The graph displays how the countries tried to compete with each other in building larger ships. Next comes the scenario of the infamous nuclear arms race. There are some players in this scenario, but the main players are USA and USSR. This nuclear arms race started immediately after the Second World War. USA sent warnings to all the countries displaying its nuclear capability against the Japanese in 1945. The Russians felt increasingly insecure about the fact that one of its competitors possessing a deadly weapon. So the Russians immediately started a nuclear program, and it successfully tested a nuclear device called First Lightning in 1949. With this test they wiped off the USA exclusiveness and nuclear capabilities. This triggered the urge in many countries to start a nuclear program. USA and USSR competed for the superiority, whereas other countries started it in the fear of isolated as non-nuclear power among nuclear states. So Britain, France, China also started their nuclear programs. India, also in fear of China, started its nuclear program, detonated its first weapon in 1974 with code name Smiling Buddha. Now let us look at the event that almost took entire world to the brink of self-destruction. This is famously known as Cuban Missile Crisis. This event took place in 1962. For a period of about 2 weeks there was extreme tension between two countries. The scenario happened like this. US has nuclear missile bases in Turkey and Italy, which were very close to the Russian mainland. So the Russians, as a retaliation, made newly formed communist government in Cuba, and shifted a large chunk of nuclear missile to Cuba. This made us extremely nervous, as it would take a few minutes to attack Florida from Cuba. This act of Russia created a rift between the two great superpowers. It is worthy to note the fact that US spent 40% of its income on military that period. The number of nuclear warheads US increased to double in number within a span of 5 years. The entire tension came to an end after when both USA and Russia agreed to dismantle their nuclear weapons for Turkey and Cuba respectively. The amazing attempt of Russia to catch up with USA in number of nuclear warheads is shown in the graph. The Russians tried to increase their number, but US, after they believed they had enough warheads, started updating its technologies for a better payload delivery, such as ICBMs, SLBM, that can be launched from submarines, etc. Finally, after both countries understood that it would result in mutual destruction, both countries started decreasing their stockpile. That brings us to the end of the arms race contagion. Here it is observed how the countries competed with each other and how this weapon development became a contagion. Thank you.